newborn foal is not the blank slate it might appear to be. It comes into the world ready, but ready for a life in the wild, not the domesticated life ahead of it. Its mother can't teach it. She has learned to live alongside humans, but that knowledge doesn't pass through milk. It's up to us to step in. What equine neuroscience tells us is that evolution gave young animal a window, early and short, where the brain has the ability to rewire itself with a speed and an ease that will never happen again. But what can we do to help these foals get ready for the rest of their lives with us? There are 4 things I want every foal to understand before I step back and let them grow and let be horses. Not tricks, not commands, not any specific handling. For foundation, and everything a horse will ever be asked to do with humans will be built on these. The foal's brain at birth is a mix of pre-installed responses and pathway waiting to be shaped. In a way, some roads are already paved, but most are still gravel. In those first 50 days, the road that gets used the most will get paved. A stimulus triggers a response, and when that same circuit fires repeatedly, it consolidates. It becomes the default route, the go-to. That is learning at the most fundamental neurobiological level. And at no point in a horse's life does that happen more quickly or more permanently than in those early weeks. So, what roads do we want to pave? Nothing paves a neural pathway faster than fear. And that's not just a figure of speech, it's actual biology. Fear-based learning exists because for millions of years it kept animals alive. The animal that survived a terrifying encounter learned to avoid similar situation and lived to reproduce. Horses are prey animals. They are built to flee from the moment they hit the ground. That pre-existing, that pre-wired survival system is extraordinary, but fast learning from a frightening experience means those pathway gets carved deep into the architecture of the brain. And that's frankly a paved road I want to take apart. So the first job is simple to say, less simple to do. Interrupt the instinct to flee before anything else gets learned in its place. Neurologically, what we need to do is to force a pause between the stimulus, a human approaching, and the response, which is flight. Because in that pause, we have a chance to teach something different. Now, I don't start handling foals until they're about a week old, unless there's a medical reason to intervene any earlier, of course. I leave them alone to bond with the mare and find their feet. That's also important. Research have proven that. If they approach me on their own because they're curious, that's welcome, but I don't try to manipulate that. But around day 6 or 7, I will begin to interact with them on purpose, and most will be a bit apprehensive. To them, I'm a strange 2-legged predator. The sooner they learn otherwise, the better. When I approach for the first time, I will crouch down. I will come from the front or the side, never from behind, because that just triggers the flight response immediately. And I will take hold of the foal with one arm in front of the chest and one behind. Gently, but firmly enough that fleeing isn't an option. That is the pause. I'm interrupting that flight response by simply not letting it happen. My only goal at this stage is for the foal to relax in my presence. And the moment it does, even slightly, I let go and I walk away. I made a whole video about what that looks like in practice. I will link it down in the description and it'll be at the end of the video. That release is the reward. In the brain, it will trigger a small release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that the brain uses to mark an experience as worth repeating. Over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, dopamine has helped the brain reinforce responses that aided in survival. It's the animal brain's built-in signal that something worked. At this age, that release is really the only reward we can offer the foal. Food, treats mean nothing to them. We are not the source of the one thing they want, which is milk. And touch, which can work beautifully with older horses, is still an acquired taste at that age. Many young foal actually find it overstimulating. The system of stimulus followed by a release is what we call the negative reinforcement in neuroscience. And the term gets misunderstood constantly. Negative here does not mean harsh. It means negative in the sense negative space. It simply means that the reward is the removal of something rather than the addition of something. The pressure is release. The brain registered, that response made the pressure go away. The dopamine is released. Next time, the foal will find that response more quickly. Within a few days to a week at most foal accept being held quietly. We have unpaved that road. And then around 3 weeks, something shifts further. You give the foal a gentle rub on the rump, and instead of simply tolerating it, it softens, it leans in, it starts to actually seek it out. The foals will back up to you so you can scratch their butt. There's a different connection being made here. They are itchy because they're losing their foal coat and it's starting to shed. And now the scratches we can give them feel genuinely good. We now have a positive reward alongside the release. And using that tool simply speeds up the whole thing. Now the foals are actually very comfortable around you. So now you might ask, why impose any of this? Why not just wait for the foal to discover that human contact is actually pleasant? Because every time a foal moves away from you, every time it sidesteps your hand, or it pulls back, or it chooses to hide behind its mother, it's practicing avoidance. And practice makes that reaction almost permanent. It gets laid down exactly like every other pathway does. Repetition, reinforcement, consolidation. Besides, what we're seeing is the interruption of the stimulus-reaction signal. It's a lot easier to hold a week-old foal than one that is 3 or 4 weeks old. Horses are exceptional readers of social signal. They can parse the flick of an ear, a shift in weight, a change in posture, and draw an accurate conclusion from it under a second. Their brain were shaped to do exactly that over millions of years of living in social group, where reading another animal accurately could mean the difference between comfort and discomfort, and sometimes between life and death. But can they read us? Well, not automatically. That's the next road to pave. With another horse, the signal are unambiguous. A pin ear, a reach to bite mean move, now. Another horse that backs toward them and cocks a hind leg, well, that's pattern that's going to be filed away for next time. They learn the intent through direct interaction, repeated observation, and immediate consequences. The whole system is built around reading animals that share their body language. We don't. We are bipedal, expressionless by horse standard, and we have no ears to speak of. The signals are there, but they are in a language the foal has never had to learn before. The good news is that horses learn by observation, which makes this the most straightforward of the 4 foundations to build. We don't need to train it directly. We just need to be present regularly, consistently, doing the same kind of things in the same kind of ways so that the foal can start to see the pattern in our movement. I can show you what happens when the exposure doesn't come early enough. I have a mare at home right now who was raised on the range with minimal human contact as a youngster. She is learning, she is willing, but when she arrived, she treated everything I did as a potential ask. Every movement in her direction put her on alert, and sometimes just a fast movement made her flee. She could not tell the difference between me just existing, moving around near her, and me wanting something from her. Compare that with the 2 fillies in the yard with her. They had daily handling and regular human presence from the start. They read me effortlessly. When I'm just there, when I want them to move, when I'm about to ask something, that calibration cost them nothing because it was built early during exactly the window we're talking about. The range mare will get there, of course, but it's taking a bit longer to build what came easily in a matter of weeks to the fillies when they were younger. Before I go any further, I want to thank my Patreon and Hoofbeat YouTube member for their support. I want to thank particularly Top Mare members Cheryl Louise, Emma, Amanda, and Naomi. Thank you. If you want to join them in supporting the channel, getting behind the scene information, and the opportunity to ask me questions, you can go to my Patreon page. The QR code is here, or the link will be down in the description. The next foundation is the one that makes leading, tying, loading, every future handling scenarios possible. And just like the first, the foal comes into the world with a paved road we actually don't want it to have. If you push a foal, it will push back. That is the default response, leaning into pressure, not away from it. If you've ever tried to move a foal into a particular position and felt it press back against you as hard as you pressed into it, that's not stubbornness. Their pre-wired response is doing exactly what it was designed to do. We need to unpave that road too. And we need to replace it with something we can actually work with. Apply a pressure, for example, push on the haunch, that can work, but a hand on the bridge of the nose works really well. The foal will try different response, and the moment it finds the right one, moving away from the pressure is released. The brain records, that response made the stimulus go away, dopamine. The road gets paved a little bit more with every repetition. Once more, that is neurobiology in action. But here's the part that most people miss, and the neuroscience is unambiguous on this. After the release, pause. Stay off the road for a beat. What feels to you like doing nothing is the system doing the most important work. Trainers call it soak time, but it applies even to the smallest lesson, maybe especially then. The sequence is stimulus, response, release, dopamine, pause, learn. Rush to the next ask and you're compressing that consolidation. Be still and let the wiring set in. Now, what we're really doing here is installing shared language. Horses rarely use physical touch to communicate with each other. It is almost entirely intent and body language. But in the human world, almost everything we ask of a horse will involve some sort of physical pressure. A hand, a rope, a leg. Our hands are constantly on them, and that pressure doesn't come naturally to them. It needs to be learned and understood before it can be made light. And once the foal understand that pressure combined with human intent means find a release, that is the foundation of everything that follows. And what exactly are we building? That question takes us to the final foundation, the one most people never teach on purpose. A foal that accepts touch, reads our intention, and gives the pressure is, yes, well on its way. But there's one more thing I want to make sure that it gets in those first 50 days. And it's less of a skill than a disposition. I want the foal to learn that challenges have solution and that it is capable of finding them. When the foal encounters something new and tries different response and find the one that releases the pressure, it learns something that goes beyond that one challenge. With every success, its confidence in its own ability to figure things out grows. It learns that challenges have pattern. It learns that trying works. Janet Jones, in her book Horse Brain, Human Brain, described this as indirect learning, and it is a concept worth thinking a little bit about. The idea is that we should not try to teach a skill the way we picture it in our mind with our big frontal cortex, where we can see the whole picture and we know the rationale behind it. Horses don't. Instead, we need to break it down into a series of small, separate challenges, each one tackled, mastered, and then assembled into the larger whole. Now, most people grasp that idea. The problem is that what feels fine-grained to us is often still too large of a leap for a foal with a limited life experience. So, whatever increment you think is small enough, go even finer. Take loading into a trailer. To us, it probably looks like 3 steps to learn. To a foal, it's 5 or 6 entirely separate challenges. Walking over a different ground, moving from light into shadow, being in an enclosed space, feeling the floor shift underfoot, hearing perhaps metal clang as their weight moves around, and of course, leaving their companion behind. A wild horse faces a finite set of challenges. Predators, weather, terrain, other horses, the same landscape, the same herd, the same threats its ancestors faced before it. Its pre-installed response are built for exactly that world, and they are enough. But a domesticated horse faces something entirely different. Trailers, vet, clippers, crowd, shows, box stall, a farrier visit every 6 weeks for the rest of its life, new stable, new paddock, new horses, new humans. The list doesn't end because our world doesn't end. Every year of that horse's life will bring situation its nervous system was not fundamentally designed to handle. Neuroscience is now able to explain what horse trainers have known for a very long time, that in order for the horse to cope in our world, we need to prepare it one step at a time. It also tells us we have a 50-day of maximum neuroplasticity to leverage. These animals didn't choose domestication. They arrived wired for a world that they will likely never see. 5,000 years into that arrangement, the least we can do is to use that window that evolution gave us to prepare them for it. My name is Veronique, and this is the Science of Raising Horses. And if you like the practical scientific aspect of raising horses, you're in the right place because that's pretty much all I talk about. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.